The floor is yours, Udi.
All right, I'm Udi Shor, and I'm a volunteer with English B'Yachad. The whole impetus started, like I was working with my student and just giving him the best of my knowledge of best practices on networking and job interviewing, and I realized that I was sort of doing it slapdash. It was stuff that I helped my kids with, and I thought, let me put down my thoughts in a little bit more organized way, and then if I'm doing that, let me share it. So I've produced like two resources there, that one on networking and one on job interviewing. And so I thought I would share them with you. They are designed as resources. The intent is not that they're PowerPoint decks, and they've been designed so that all the information you need to share with your student is on the slide. You don't have to work from the notes. And they're even designed so that you can print them as PDFs because they are created in PowerPoint and Windows, and there may be some issues with Mac, or some people who don't have whatever. So you can also save them as PDFs and send them. And after this talk, we will upload them, make them available to you. I see there are people on this call I recognize who have some HR background, and so I welcome. This is my first pass at these. So if I welcome your constructive criticism, and we'll be happy to include, incorporate, revise with your suggestions. I welcome that. Whatever helps the students the most. So with that, I'll share like the first one on networking, and then just walk you through it briefly. Wait, there it is. Okay. All right, everybody see? All good?
Yep.
Oh, you're muted. All right. And by the way, feel free to comment. This can also be a bit of a working session if you have best practices or suggestions for how to either improve or work with this. Certainly feel free to speak up. So, so the idea is hiring is a series of screening steps. We're explaining, this is establishing why it's important to network with your student. So each step narrows the list of applicants, where you'd start with 100 where most are not qualified, and you go through these narrowing steps of the hiring manager and phone interview, and then in-person interview. But networking bypasses several steps. It can get you past some of these screening steps. In fact, I'm going super fast. Let me know if you want me to slow down. But so the idea was that I went over this with my student, and to treat it as a vocabulary and make sure he understood it, I would have him, he read it. And if a word gave him difficulty, he would, or if he hesitated over it, I said, is that word familiar to you? And so, we would discuss and make sure he understood the word. So like phantom ads, I don't think he knew what phantom was. So, that was a teaching moment as well. But the idea here from this slide is that 80% of jobs come from referrals, not just submitting your CV. So the good news is that networking has specific steps, and they are meet, talk, ask, and thank. Now, again, in the slide, these build every time I press enter. So if you present this to your student and do the same thing, it will build that way. But you could certainly also just share a PDF with them, and do it that way. And then in that case, the slides are all designed so that they look good just as this final image. So let's go through each of those steps. Meet people, make 3 lists. And again, these are builds that just to give them small chunks of text at a time. But the idea is advise them to make 3 lists of your current job, previous job, friends and family. You're looking for people who will return your call, go to lunch. No one on this list will offer you a job. That's a really key point for you, the mentor, to emphasize. Because they think, oh, if someone says, well, I don't have a job for you, that's the end of the conversation. No, it's not, but they know somebody who might offer you a job. You are looking for somebody who can, and again, to reinforce that point that, yes, ideally they can offer you a job, but also good if they can refer you to somebody, or refer you to somebody who can arrange for an interview, or tell you of a job opening, or give you the name of somebody who can do any of the above. or introduce you to somebody who can give you the name of somebody who can do any of the above. So the idea is to kind of open their thinking as to like, look, basically, anyone is a good person to talk to. And the important point here is also weak ties. And by the way, I've just a side note, when in working with, there's possibly a design flaw in the layout of the slides, but I noticed that my student typically would skip the headline and go straight to the bullet points. So, you kind of you need to kind of focus their attention to the subject of the slide, which is that weak ties are more important than strong ties. And there's a famous study, Getting a Job, that surveyed 282 Boston workers, and 56% got jobs through a personal connection. Of those connections, most were weak ties. 28% only saw these people rarely. So, and this explaining why friends occupy the same world you do. They know the same people you know and the same things. Acquaintances are more likely to know something you don't. The more acquaintances you have, and this was a word that gave my student difficulty, the more acquaintances you have, the more powerful you are. And in Israel, everybody knows somebody who works in tech, so it makes sense to meet with almost anyone who's willing to meet with you. And then a quick technique on how to use LinkedIn to kind of make a connection, a bridge connection, a bridge person, anyone who works in the company you're interested in. And these are steps on link. You go to your target company's page. Let's say you want a job at Cisco, select people, enter your school, hometown, or specific area of interest. And you're going to get results of people you may know who share those school interests or hometown or whatever, that have that in common with you. You need a paid membership to message people outside your network, so you should look for them online. And then you can contact them and approach them. If you have a mutual connection, in this case, this Bradley Wise guy, then you can ask that person, that mutual connection, to introduce you. Okay, any questions so far? Too fast, too slow? I will take that as assent. Okay. When requesting a meeting, follow the example of Inigo Montoya in The Princess Bride. In this case, he's saying, hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father, prepare to die. And that means polite greeting, give his name, relevant personal link, and manage expectations. So now let's see how this would work in this question. So you have hello, my name is Yoel Job Seeker. I'm calling you with the suggestion of Noya acquaintance who thought it'd be good for us to meet. Would you be willing to meet with me for 10 minutes to share your experience in the industry? Polite greeting, name, relevant personal connection, manage expectations. Now, this last thing is key. People are afraid to request the interview because, again, it's like, I'm not asking you for a job. You're not asking for a job. 10 minutes is an easy commitment, and most people will be flattered that you see them as a source of good advice. And then here's the same thing. That was a phone conversation. Here's an email request. Again, include the person, relevant connection, but remind them to put it in the subject header, because a lot of people delete. My student was not really fully aware of the importance of the subject header and getting your email read. So he needed a little bit of coaching on that. CC the person who referred you, because it shows that the referring person, includes them in the approach. It shows that you followed up on their recommendation and gives them an opportunity to comment and say, yeah, you should meet with this guy. And this is a mistake I've seen even, experienced seasoned workers do. They leave it up to the person they're calling. They also, when can you meet with me? And there's all this back and forth. No, that doesn't work. So give them a choice of offer them a choice of time windows, but your referring person doesn't need to be included on the logistical emails. Talk with them now. First prepare for the meeting, research the person in Google and LinkedIn, find out who you're meeting with, what have they written, posted, research the company, what is being said about it in the news, and then based on research, have questions ready. And here are some sample questions that, again, the idea, by the way, is that you would mail this presentation to your student afterwards. I see Myra's writing furiously. Thank you very much.
Always do.
Okay, good. Maybe you and I should have a working session afterwards on this. Because this was culled from some YouTubes of HR people posting, but I recognize you, Myra, from other HR things. So
Thank you.
Interested to speak with you. So the idea is that you would mail this to your student afterwards. You don't have to go over this. They don't have to remember this, but when it comes time to actually do some of these things, they can refer to this document that you've sent them and figure out, okay, which of these questions might I want to include or have ready? All right. Recommendation that you bring a notebook to every interview to remind you of what you asked, to take notes on the answers, and to record contact info that will come up during the meeting. Keep your promise. Offer to stop at 10 minutes. Let them extend the meeting if they're willing. By the way, Myra, did you want to comment on anything we've said so far to kind of, I don't want to wait till the end if there's, when it's all.
No, I'm following. Excellent information.
Okay, good. All right. Before your 10 minutes are up, though, ask for more contacts if you can stay in touch. So more contacts. Who else do you know? I mean, you're networking, assuming the person didn't offer you a job on the spot. Who else do you know? Would it be okay if I contact and may I tell them you recommended that I speak with them? So it's name dropping, getting permission to name drop. And, or if you're comfortable, would you pass on my CV? And Israelis call it CV, not resume, as we've seen in other calls. Would you pass on my CV to the hiring manager? And then ask if you can stay in touch. And if I have a question about XYZ, may I reach out to you? And at the end of your meeting with them, thank them. Important thing, thank anyone who helps you no later than the next day. CC the person who referred you to let them know that they made a successful match. A short note is fine. You can mention what you learned and confirm next steps if appropriate. To set yourself apart, follow up with a handwritten note. None of these people think to do that. You may be the only one who does this if you do it. Networking does not stop when you get hired. Continue to nurture your contacts. Let them know your job hunt was successful. So when you do get hired, when you met, we suggested I do this. It worked out well. I got hired. May I reach out to you if I have career questions in the future? Leave the door open to contact them in the future because you'll be on the job market again. Update them on promotions and achievements. Just again, a quick way to stay in touch. So you can reach out to them when you're back on the job market. And here's an example of an email of someone who's now looking for a job again, and they've nurtured their contacts. So these people are good to reach out for again. Okay, little moment of levity here. And that's it. Comments, thoughts?
Wow, well done, wow.
Excellent, excellent.
That was well done. And I'll tell you one other tip my brother-in-law used. He was using a graduate school list of people to network with, to look for an internship years ago. And he started with the last letter of the alphabet, figuring that everyone got that same list and everyone was going to start with the top of the list. And it was very effective for him. So just another cute
Great
tip.
tip. Myra, were you raising?
My only comment is I don't do this with my student. I have a different student, but my son had to look for a job a couple years ago. And this is sort of what we followed.
Good.
Using contacts and it followed these steps before I even knew about it.
Oh, good. I mean, you might share, if you have an anecdote. I got my first job through a business associate of a friend of my aunt's. So you could, it would certainly help to share that's how it actually really works in real life.
Yeah, one comment, the company that he now works for at first was very interested, several interviews, and then they just couldn't find a position or didn't have the money to hire him. Several months later, he contacted them again. They asked him to come in and he got a job. So don't give up.
Yeah, that's another point. I mean, I know I'm a freelance writer, but I know one of the big companies that I worked with for many years told me no. And then like months later, I just tried them again. And they were, at that time, the need was there. And yeah, and then I got in.
Good. Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
From Linda or Debbie or Harvey, people who are in the Israeli system, just that might have anything to add. This is a very thoughtful process, I think, and I think that's one of the main things Udi's communicating. There's a process to this.
Oh, by the way, it doesn't sink in. I'll tell you that, because I went over this with my student. And then now I asked, he just finished his tech career course. And so I said, so what are you doing? He says, I'm sending out my CV. And I said, well, what about all the networking? So at least it lays it out to them. And if they go, I have no idea what else I can do, they can say, well, here are some other things you can do. When they reach that point, maybe when they have to hit bottom and realize, sheesh, I'm not coming up with anything. Then
Can I
they'll,
make a suggestion?
yeah,
I know in my field in medicine, going to conferences, professional conferences or tech fairs,
yeah,
I think is a very targeted and very serious way of networking. Even
Right.
if you're not invited as a company, you can go as an individual.
good point. I think I would like to add a slide on that of like, use tech fairs as an opportunity to network. Easy to do, easy to add. Thank you. All right, let's look at job interviewing. So, just quick, again, this started from, I was practicing with my student and it was like, tell me about yourself. And I kind of had to wing it of how we should handle that. And then I was able to do a little bit more research and come up with some best practices. Certainly, what is your greatest weakness? That one is always a terrifying question. And so, and with a bit of research, I came up with I think I found, again, thanks to some very helpful HR online posters, found better way to handle that question. So we'll get to that. All right, so getting hired, first of all, is to kind of set their expectations. Look, it's getting hired as a series of interviews. And I did the illustration, but also the expression jumping through hoops. So it's a little teaching moment. You can teach them that expression. And so there's an initial, and this is just, quick overview that there are different types of interviews. There's HR screening, there's technical interview, which I know the guys in tech career are doing. They have interviews where they're given technological challenges to solve, and just to test their skills. And there's the manager, team leader, social interviews where they want to really talk to them and see how well they fit in the team, jumping through hoops. So, but the end of this presentation, this is a longer presentation. I will go through it quickly though. And so by the end of this, to give them a little motivation, and again, you can do this over several meetings. It's too long, I think, to do it in one thing. My student and I have been doing this over, I think, 3 sessions so far. So, but by the end of this, you will know the steps you can take before an interview to give yourself an advantage, how to make a good impression during the interview, how to answer common but tricky questions such as tell me about yourself, your greatest weakness, and what kind of salary are you expecting, and what to do after an interview to further improve your odds of success. So stay with us. All right, job interviews seek to answer 3 basic questions. This is from Robert Half. Can you do the job? Do you want the job? Will you fit in? Your job in this whole interview process is to answer those questions. And let's just explain what they're looking for in this. Can you do the job? And this explains, do you have the skills? Are there any gaps? Are you going to be able to fill them? Can you solve problems and work independently? Do you show potential for career growth? Do you want the job? Or are you just looking for a paycheck? Are you sincerely interested in us? Are you committed to us? And will you fit in? Which is, will you listen to supervisors? Are you open to feedback? And will you get along with people? And do you fit the company's work culture and work ethic? So your overall goal is to answer, yes, I can do the job. I want the job. I will fit in. And if you understand that that's what you're trying to convey over the course of the interview process, that'll give you a sense of what you're trying to accomplish. So 3 questions to ask before the interview. What type of interview is it? Am I going to be, is it HR screening, or am I talking to somebody I'm going to be working with? Can you send me a job description if one wasn't posted? And who will be conducting the interview? If you can get that. If possible, this was recommended. My student was a little shocked that you would ask such a thing. I don't know if how this would play in Israel, but it was recommended. If does this person have a bio on your website where I can find it? If not, could you send me their bio? Israelis can be chutzpahdik, so why not? Prepare for your interview. Review the job description, research the company, research the interviewer, and we'll walk through each of these as well. Read the job description carefully And so here I just took an example. So be prepared to discuss your abilities for each of these things. You know, that I see, you want me to establish and maintain network performance. Let me tell you what I know about that. If there are gaps, be ready to explain how you plan to fill them. So you say, you know, this is an area that I need to develop, and here's what I'm doing about that. Research the company, look at their website, look at press releases, look at top executives. Learn what's important to the company. How does it see itself? What is its future direction? Shows that you want the job enough to do research, prepares you to answer how much you can fit in. Again, all of this is a ton of work. I don't know if they're going to do all of it, just as my guy isn't networking yet as well as I would like him to, but at least don't tell me, you know, you can't just throw up your hand and say, I have no idea what else I can do. These are things you can do to give yourself an advantage. Research the people who will interview you, learn what you can about their professional background and what they posted. Not Facebook, don't be a stalker. Shows you prepare for your tasks and prepares you to ask relevant questions. Conduct a self-assessment. What personal qualities make you a good fit for the job? What experiences, talents, and strengths? Try to come up with 1 or 2 key strengths that you want the interviewer to remember. Remember, they're interviewing a lot of people. So, you know, what do they remember? Oh, this was the one who's very good at X, Y, Z. You know, what do you want them to remember at the end of the day? Your brand. My greatest asset is my ability to tell you exactly what you want to hear. How to make a good impression. Arrive early, dress to impress, and this is you know, 1 notch above the dress code for people in this position. Make eye contact. This was almost unnecessary, but then I thought it was helpful as a reminder that there are video interviews, and people sometimes, you know, end up, you know, the camera's here and they're talking there, so you end up, they're doing the whole interview like this, you know, looking off to the side. And so it's a helpful reminder that be cognizant of where the camera is when you're doing an interview. And again, bring a notebook with you because you're going to have details that you want to refer to later on in the process. Have extra copies of your CV on hand, and remember people's names because you may see them again and you want to send thank you notes. During video interviews, take a screenshot, video interviews to capture faces and names. Listen, and this is just advice on, you know, my guy is probably too shy to talk, I think, but maybe some people may be too talkative or whatever. So this is a reminder, try to talk 50% of the time, listen 50% of the time, and limit your responses to 2 minutes or less because people want to, the interviewer has to feel good too. Questions you can expect. Tell me about yourself. This was like one of the scary ones. So don't summarize your CV. They've already seen it. Instead, prepare a story that links your key strengths to the job description. Suggested structure for that story is present, past, and future. And I'm seeing a number of HR sites that recommend this structure. Present, your current role, perhaps a recent accomplishment. Past, how you got there, previous experience that's relevant to the job and company. Future, what you're looking to do next and why you're interested in this job and a great fit for it. And then link these to the job description and your key strengths. So, and then here's an example. I was just looking online, couldn't find, you know, the people in tech career, I think, are looking for lower level positions. At least my guy kept saying, I'm not a software developer, but this is what I found. So I'm open to the recommendations of better examples, but here's an example from someone who wants to be a self-developer, and these are his key strengths, that he's, you know, specializes in mobile applications and intuitive user interfaces. My guy didn't know what intuitive meant, so that was a teaching moment. Past, previously I worked as a software engineer at a startup, and then this is matched to the job description that they're looking for someone to do these things. And then future, again, matched to the job description. So the idea is present, past, future, matched to the job description and your key strengths. It's a lot to remember, so prepare and practice. Okay? Good so far? All right, when describing yourself, be a star. Prepare stories that show your positive attribute in action. So, and the star is situation, task, action, result. And this is a, you know, these are step, you know, set the scene, what your responsibility, what was the task in that responsibility, what actions did you take and what outcomes. And then here's an example of someone who had I usually get along with my coworkers, but there was someone who didn't wouldn't let him take his part in a shared task. And so they decided, he approached him and we split our responsibilities and he agreed and the transition went smoothly. So this is an example of a STAR story. Use the STAR formula to answer behavioral questions. And these are examples of behavioral questions. The same STAR story can be used to, now someone will say, oh my God, how many stories do I have to come up with? You can reuse them, or not reuse them, but you can use them for different scenarios. The same story for how did you overcome a challenge, or have you ever had to work under a tight deadline? And then so if you have 3 to 5 STAR stories ready, you should be able to answer most behavioral questions. And you can have notes about the stories in your notebook. Another reason to have that notebook. Okay. Again, the idea is that you send this to your student to refer to afterwards, because there's several slides of questions here. And so, he can look at these, he or she can look at these afterwards and say, okay, would I be able to answer this question? Would I be able to answer that question? And, do I have enough STAR stories to kind of cover which ones come up? So the idea is that you don't have to sit with them and go over all of these questions with them in the moment. Okay, be ready for gotcha questions. And my student said he knew what gotcha questions were, so good on him. So what kind of work are you looking for? And then here's the, I think Marla or someone recommended that during job interviews, sometimes you reverse the roles and let your student be the interviewer and you be the interviewee. So they get a little empathy of what, I don't think they're aware of how frightened the job interviewer is about how, they don't know what question, they don't always know what questions they're supposed to ask. And they're afraid of hiring the wrong person, that they'll blow it. So this left-hand column is a reminder of what are they afraid of, what's on their mind. So they want to know, do you really want this job? They're afraid you're looking for a different job. And so then the strategy for answering is you are looking for exactly the kind of work the employer is offering. Repeat back in your own words what they have said about the job and emphasize the skills that you have to do it. So I do the same thing with other questions. Have you done this kind of work before? What's the employer afraid of? What's the strategy for answering? And then these are, you don't have to say all these things, but these are suggested things that could be in your response. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Consider the future will look like if you succeed, and here are suggested responses to that question. It's not just the money, you want to grow and contribute to the company, just a thing to try to include in your response to that. And usually it's like, I see myself getting promoted to this and this. Well, not everyone wants to do that. So here's a slide. If you don't see yourself on management track, what I'm really looking for is something stable and predictable. I like that this role offers that. And so this is something I look forward to over the next several years. Still suggests a long-term commitment to the company. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? On Earth? Can you be more specific? Okay. Your greatest weakness. And this is, the employer is afraid you have a character flaw and hopes you will blurt it out. My student didn't know what blurt meant, but so we took a moment on that. So this is a real minefield. So this one is there's a sort of an extensive response to it. So first, don't say you're perfect and have no weaknesses. Don't try to disguise a strength as a weakness. I'm a perfectionist. I work too hard. Don't mention a personality trait, which is something you typically can't change. Don't choose a weakness directly related to the job description, like I lose my patience when you're applying for a customer service job, but also not one completely unrelated. I'm not good at social media. So instead, find a weakness you are actively trying to improve. Make a list of all the things you've had trouble with, been criticized for. Cross out the ones that always happen, because those are personality traits that are hard to change. Look for ones that happen in a specific context or situation, only sometimes. When you're overworked, when instructions are unclear. And then create a story about that weakness. In situations where, describe the situation when this comes up. I have tended to, and then describe the weakness. I've become aware that, describe what has to change. So instead, I now, and describe what you're taking to address the weakness. As a result, and you describe the improvements you have seen. So why is this formula good? Because in situations where it's only in certain situations, not a fixed personality trait, I have tended to, this tends to happen, not always, not a fixed personality trait. I've become aware, shows that you realize that when you need to work on something. So instead, I now shows that you work to fix your problems, and it shows that those actions are effective, that you're capable of change. And then here's a sample story. In situations where I get very busy, I've tended to resist asking for help. I've become aware that I need to recognize when I'm overloaded. So now I know to pull others in to collaborate, and I'm better able to focus and complete my tasks. I'm going at New York speed here, so. This was an additional resource I found, which was and my student was very interested in these. He started looking over these. Oh, could I answer this? Could I answer that? Certainly, questions that may come up in a tech interview, they're not necessarily behavioral questions, but worth pondering. And there's a link here and a PDF that you can launch to see more discussion of these. Okay. What is your expected salary? So what, why are they asking you this? Because they want to know if you want the job badly enough to accept the little they're willing to pay. Do you know your own worth? Can we get you to commit now to a lower salary? So if it was listed in the posting, simply repeat that to the interviewer. If not, and it's early in the interview process, these are just formulas for dodging the question. My salary expectations are flexible. I would like to learn a little bit more about the position. Okay. Now that you know more, now it's crunch time. This is the beginning of your salary negotiations. Try to make them give the first number. Well, what does the job pay? If they insist that you go first, do your homework. Research salary ranges for your position in your location. So that gives you your company's range to the best of what you can find out. Be ready with your own range that aims a little higher. But what should the bottom of that range be? Decide on your minimal acceptable number. Let's say, you know that they pay between 40 and 50. So your minimum, and you decide, I should be near the bottom, but I don't have to be the very bottom of that. So your man is 41, ask 10% more. That's a suggested range. If their salary offer is too low, consider it calmly and silently, and after an uncomfortable, thoughtful pause, make them sweat a little bit. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your making me this offer and showing your trust in me. I have a couple of questions, if that's okay. The offered salary is X. I was expecting Y. And we have no budget. Our hands are tied. They always say this. I understand. It's just that based on the strengths and value that I bring, I was hoping for a number more in the range of Y. We have no budget. Our hands are tied. You can try other options. Do you sometimes offer a sign-on bonus? Some companies do. Or can we review my performance in 3 to 6 months? And if I meet certain criteria, my salary would increase. Worth a try. Salary offer is better, but not quite there. Pause to consider. Again, make them sweat a little bit. Thank you so much. That does go a long way toward bridging the gap. Can I just say, however, I think I deserve more. At this point, they have to decide if they are willing to risk losing you, starting over, or going with their second choice. Remember, they're offering you a position. They may offer more. Worth a try. Questions you should ask during a job interview, because you don't want a job that fits you poorly. And this was an opportunity to teach the phrase to fit a square peg in a round hole. Don't get stuck in a workplace with poor conditions, no opportunities for growth. Quitting or being fired after a short stay will just create a resume gap that you don't want to explain. So ask questions to protect yourself, to show that you make careful decisions, and to show that you prepared and are interested in the job and company. Prepare at least 3. They can be in your notebook. All right, so questions about the culture, company culture. And then this lets the interviewer talk about themselves, which makes them feel good. And these are suggested questions about the company culture. Role-specific questions, clarify what will be expected of you, show that you are forward-thinking and looking to, working at this company and what that would mean for you. Hesitation questions. And it's your chance to fight for the job, because this is your chance to uncover reasons that they're holding back on. So based on what we talked about today, is there anything that is causing you hesitation about my fit for this position? Is there anything I can clarify? How do I compare to other candidates you've interviewed? Final questions. Next step in the hiring process. When can I hear from you? May I contact you? And then concluding the interview, thank the interview and address the 3 questions. Whoops, let me back up on that. So based on what I've heard, I want the job. I can do the job. I want the job and I can fit in. And so these are 3 bullet points that based on what I've heard, I'm even more excited. I can add value because I can do the job and I can fit in. Thank all the interviewers, always with the thank you note and reasons why you should do a thank you note. Here's an example of a thank you note that again establishes that I want the job, I can do the job, and I can fit in. Thanking, handwritten note. You got this. That's it. Myra?
Excellent presentation. You've covered a lot quickly.
Okay. Again, it would take a lot longer with the student, much slower
Sure.
going. So, but at least, and again, it's there and they can refer to it.
Mhm.
And I
Appreciate
thank you
it.
very much for the presentation. I'm on the ground in Jerusalem with the students. I was head of HR in a company in England. The only thing is I've been asking around here and there's a lot of screening goes on before they even get to the interview. So there's sort of basic questions. More and more now, people are asked to do a sort of a video and there's nobody on the other side on the screen. They just ask questions and they have to answer them. So it's a screening out of people who are not suitable. Do you want to make any comment on this?
That's a good point. I did see on the one comment I saw of an HR person talking about video screening interviews. She said no one watches them.
But the
I don't know.
agencies who, I mean, for example, my granddaughter is the HR person for the Department of Justice IT department or something, and they only use agencies. They don't advertise directly, and they don't take. I mean, I tried with Minna to maybe, see if we could make some sort of introductions, but they just say you have to go through the agency.
Well, so that's 2 issues. One is, again, that's the networking presentation of how to, if possible, to sidestep that. But maybe I can do more research on video interviews and just see if there are some best practices for what to do in a video, assuming if they keep asking them, maybe somebody's watching them. I don't know.
I know in England they do, but I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know about here.
Well, I mean, there would be obviously some best practices of like, you have to be, you have to get the heart of it up front, because people are going to fast forward very quickly.
Yeah. Okay, but they're looking for certain answers, so that's what they're looking for. The key words.
Right. Okay. All right. I will research best practices for video interviews and just see if we can put a slide, at least one slide on that.
Right, and being screened by an agency as well.
Mm-hmm.
Being screened by an
Right.
agency.
No, I understand, but I don't know. I mean, that's one. If the agency is interviewing you, it's an interview. Unless is that interview different somehow?
I think it's very basic, very basic.
Right. Well,
again, they're looking for keywords.
Yeah.
And if you sort of come up with those words, then you go on to the next level.
Okay. HR. All right. I will look for best practices for HR screening interviews.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts based on the presentations or some of the comments that have come as a result. Getting very nice
Yeah.
comments in the chat. So I
Yeah.
appreciate
Right, no, so
Yeah.
I have my revisions, go ahead.
If I may say, this has been quite an experience from every point of view, including all of the technical presentation that you've done. But you've really mapped out a path here, and more power to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Harvey.
Yeah, I also find it very helpful. I'm definitely going to use it. I'm also working with a student who graduated maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and he's sending out resumes. The other thing, 2 other things, I did want to say that for video interviews, I work in New York, and I work in HR, and we do watch them. And there's usually an opportunity to practice before you actually record yourself.
Mhm.
And then the last thing, and I'm not really sure, you know, I am originally from Israel, but I don't work in HR in Israel. Is it exactly the same as in the States, or are there any cultural differences in some of the networking and tips that you gave? I would be interested to know that.
Well, I mean, since you are in Israel, were the networking tips applicable or?
No, I'm not. I'm in New York.
Oh,
I'm
you're in New York.
originally from Israel. I mean,
I
I can
see.
ask some people. I'm sure you have resources too. Because some of it is a bit cultural. So I don't know. I'm just wondering if it's exactly the same in Israel, or what
Yeah.
are the, you know, slight cultural differences.
I mean, certainly we should answer, you know, your army buddies. I mean, that's certainly, maybe that's worth mentioning in the networking one.
Yes, that's true.
And I think there's since this is meant to be a tool for conversing with your student, I think that's a legit question to ask, that this was prepared from a perspective that comes primarily from North American business practices, some of which may have infiltrated the Israeli system, sometimes not. And your student, you know, needs to be aware of those things or thinking about them and thinking critically about what's relevant and what's not. But the process of using contacts and following up and this idea of weak links as well, strong links, I think that's probably more universally applicable. And, you know, we're giving our students tools, we're not doing the work for them. And so that is partly their responsibility, I think,
Yeah.
to
Wise do.
take what's relevant and ignore what isn't, or comment on what isn't and why, so we can learn. That's also very powerful.
Right. At least it gives them a starting point of, you know, at least, you know, they don't throw up, I have no idea what I should be doing or could be doing. So that, again, that you can lead a horse to water.
And I don't know, but I'd be interested, as you are all using this, you know, we know that students are sometimes starting out their interviews with maybe getting beyond the screener that Linda mentioned, but then their interviews might be in Hebrew, it might be one cultural norm, but then as they move up that ladder, they might be interviewing in English and with global leaders, and the whole tenor of the interviewer may change right back to more of what Udi has described, and having that awareness that there could be not just different levels and different types of interviewers, but as you're moving closer to getting to the decision makers, and that may include global team members who are thinking about things from a different perspective and in English, then this gives them some tools that English-speaking interviewees can use. So I think that has a lot of value as well. So I'll let Udi do what tweaking he did, and I thank you, Udi. It was a terrific presentation.
And thank you all for your comments.
Beautiful, and
Yeah, excellent.
we will get these out through the blog and put the PowerPoints up on the blog so they're downloadable. And we'll be open to your feedback and how it's going. So thank everyone. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
Oh, by the way, just a final last, there are comment in the notes of the PowerPoints. There are just like notes of some of them are irrelevant, like just where I sourced some of the images. But some of them are links to YouTube clips of HR people with a little deeper discussion of how to respond to some of the questions.
Yeah, you know, and then that way we take.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
bye.
Okay,
Bye,
thank
thank you.
you. Bye.
I mean, yeah, if we don't know the answer to this,